Good evening. I am Dr. Lisa Isaac, President of the Gateway Medical Society, and I am pleased to welcome you to the second installment of our virtual community symposium series for 2023. If you were with us for the first installment, welcome back. If you are joining us for the first time, we do extend to you a hearty welcome. Gateway Medical Society was established in Pittsburgh in 1963 and is a component of the National Medical Association. It is our mission to eradicate healthcare disparities, and one way we do this is through education. Tonight, Gateway is pleased to collaborate once again with the Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action and Dementia 360, a Presbyterian Senior Care Network program, and we thank them once again for their partnership in this endeavor. We are pleased to present the second in a six-part series for dementia for family givers. The first installment of the series was excellent. We learned that dementia has different types and causes and is quite prevalent. And between the patients and the caregivers, dementia affects the lives of just about everyone at some point in time. We also learned from our astute panel that while a person with dementia may not remember facts, they maintain their emotional needs and will remember how you make them feel. Our topic for tonight's installment is communicating for less stress and more success. Dementia affects all five senses, ability to reason and problem solve, and many other aspects of our being. So it stands to reason that we may need to develop ways to communicate in different ways. So let's learn about it. Our distinguished panel returns with Michelle Carter as our facilitator. Allow me to introduce her to some and reintroduce her to others. Michelle Carter has been in the nursing field over 25 years. She graduated from community college with an RN, attended California University of Pennsylvania for her BSN and Aspen University for a master's degree in nursing administration and management. Michelle's practice experience is in long-term care, and she serves as the director of nursing at Longwood at Oakmont for the past 5 years. She is a certified dementia practitioner and certified director in long-term care. Michelle is a member of the Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action, the Black Nurses Association, and the Pennsylvania Director of Nursing Association. She is the newly elected historian of PBNIA and has served on many committees and participated in outreach programs. Michelle is also the co-chair of a monthly Zoom called Talks About Tuesdays for PBNIA. I am pleased once again to present Michelle Carter, our facilitator moderator for this evening. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Isaac. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I just want to welcome everybody to our second session of dementia care for family caregivers. I just want to give you some housekeeping details. We will be muted. All the participants will have their mics muted, and there will be a question and answer session at the end of our presentation. So let's get started. Our first presenter that we're going to talk about today, I want to introduce Stacy Stahl. Stacy Stahl is the educator for Dementia 360. She works for Presbyterian Senior Care Network. When Stacy was in college, her maternal grandmother, Emma, developed dementia and moved in with the family. She watched her mother struggle to care for Emma while she was working a full-time job and running a household and raising her own children. Stacy knew very well how the toll was for physical and emotional on the family and caring for someone who had dementia. 37 years later, Stacy found herself helping care for her beloved mother who had dementia. After retiring for 30 years, in a 30-year career in medical and behavioral health research, Stacy reached out to Dementia 360. She wanted to help support many people who find themselves caring for the loved ones living with dementia. working first as a volunteer and now as a staff member. Stacy has found her post-retirement mission where she can apply her experience as a researcher and educator, continue her own learning, and satisfy her desire to help other families in their journey through dementia care. Amy Kowinski is our Executive Director of Dementia Care 360. She also works for Presbyterian Senior Care Network. Amy has years of professional experience in many different areas of healthcare. She's worked in gerontology, dementia care, healthcare quality improvement, and nutrition. She's also a registered dietitian. She has led and been part of task force to redesign work processes, improving outcomes and safety and patient satisfaction in hospitals, long-term care, and interdisciplinary groups. However, when she and her mother became the caregivers for her grandmother, who's living with dementia, Amy realized there's very little support in our healthcare systems for people living with dementia and for family caregivers who are the front lines in providing this care. She changed her career, devoting herself to improving the quality of care and the quality of life for people living with dementia and their family caregivers. Again, she is the Executive Director of Dementia 360, and she helps support families with caregivers living with dementia through education, coaching, and helping and navigating their journey through the disease. That is part of the goal of Dementia 360. The program is all-inclusive. The program has recognized opportunities to reach the underserved population and ability to help educate and coach and give strategies to improve the life of both dementia patients and the family caregivers. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy, so she'll start our presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, as Dr. Isaac said, tonight's presentation is called Communicating for Less Stress and More Success. Can we share the slides, please? There we go. That's great. Thank you. So next slide, please. Looks like we're actually running into a little problem with advancing the slides. We had this issue last time also. There we go. Okay, so this is the second topic in a 6-part series for dementia family caregivers. What you have on the screen now is the series of 6 sessions that we're doing. You can see the titles and the dates. They are every other Wednesday from 7 to 8 between now and March 22nd. Each session is a different topic, and the series contains what we consider to be the most important concepts for you as a family caregiver to know. We hope you'll be able to register and attend each one of them. Next slide. And actually, if you missed the first one, or if during the course of the series you'd like to go back and listen to any of them again, you can do that, because they're actually all going to be on the Gateway Medical Society website. And so to be able to get there, once they are listed, go to gatewaymedicalsociety.org, click on the News and Events tab, select Latest News from the drop-down, and look for the box pictured below and click on the link titled Gateway Medical Society Virtual Symposium Recordings. And all of our presentations will be there, as well as all of the others that have been hosted by Gateway Medical Society. Next slide. And so on the off weeks between the presentations, we are also going to be offering 30-minute telephone coaching sessions on Wednesdays, anytime between 7 in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. And the dates and the phone number to call are listed on this slide also. So the webinars are great for getting new information that you need to know, but sometimes with dementia, you have specific questions about how to handle certain situations going on at home that aren't covered in the webinars. That's normal. And so that's what these coaching sessions are for. You can call in and talk with one of our dementia experts specifically about the challenges that you are facing in your own home and work with them one-on-one to identify a strategy that could help to overcome them and make your days better. And the next slide, and then we'll get into the presentation. We also wanted to let you know that we are going to be mailing you a workbook and also a survey. So the workbook will actually include all the information from all 6 of these sessions in case you want to refer back to it in the future. And the survey is intended to help us learn from you, the family caregivers, about what you're experiencing and whether this series is helpful to you. So if you can, when you get it, please do take a few minutes to complete the one we send you. We'll also put a link to it in the chat at the end of the session tonight if you'd like to do it online. And if you want to be entered into a raffle to win a Target gift card, there's a place for you to put your name and phone number on there, so we can contact you if you are the winner. So now let's get started with tonight's presentation. So we see this topic of communication as being one of the most important things that you can learn about as a caregiver. And so why is this? Because number one, when you do it well, you and the person that you're taking care of will have better days. But on the reverse, when behaviors or less than pleasant reactions or say refusals to let you help them with care occur, this is very often not a result of the disease itself, like some people think, but this is very often a result of how you are talking or interacting with them and how you're making them feel. And so the thing about dementia is we can't change them. We can only change ourselves. So your family member has a disease that is impacting their thinking and their memory. We want you to know that communicating with somebody living with dementia is very different than with somebody who doesn't have dementia. As caregivers, we are the ones that need to change as to how we communicate with them. The good news is that communicating with somebody with dementia is a skill, meaning that it can be learned. So, you know, it's like riding a bike. You didn't just wake up one day and know how to ride a bike. You probably got on it and fell off a whole bunch of times and got back on and you got better. That's the way communicating with someone with dementia is. Sometimes you try something and you get it right, or sometimes you kind of fall off that bike, but you get another chance to try it again until you get better. And so definitely with this, practice makes perfect. Next slide. And so we wanted to break this down a little bit for you and give you some new things to think about, because communication is about words, obviously. So it has to do with what you say, what you're talking about, the words you use. But in dementia, one of the things that also becomes really important is not just the words that you're saying, but how fast you say what you're saying. So are you a fast talker? Probably. Most of us are. I actually have to concentrate on slowing down to be able to talk right here. But if you are a fast talker, this could be a problem for them because dementia affects a person's ability to process. This means if you talk too fast, chances are they're not going to understand. You might finish talking quickly and they might say, "What?" to which some people think, "Oh, they must not have heard me." And so you speak louder. They don't actually need you to talk louder. They need you to talk slower. So sometimes, I mean, other things that you might see, if a person with dementia is in a group conversation and the group is talking fast, you know, going a million miles a minute, You'll see the person with dementia kind of lose focus or lose attention or just kind of disconnect from the conversation altogether. It's not that they aren't interested or that they didn't want to participate, it's that they can't keep up. They can't change that. We can change what we do with that. And so the next thing to think about really is how you are impacting their feelings with what you're saying. So one thing to consider is how you say it or your tone. Every time I say the word tone, I can't help but think of my mom saying to me as a teenager, "I don't like your tone." And so I ask you to think about what is your tone like when you are interacting with them. Next, think about your face. So not only what does your tone sound like, but what do you actually look like when you are talking with them? We like to say sometimes, the next time you're having a conversation with them, take a look at yourself in the mirror. If you look like your mother on a bad day, you might want to dial it back again and start over. And finally, how do you make them feel with what you're saying? Or what vibe is the conversation giving off? Are you being calm and reassuring? Or is it possible that you might sometimes come across as telling them what to do or telling them what not to do, or pointing out when they make mistakes, or maybe they see you as a little bossy? How you make them feel when you talk to them is more important than even the words that you're saying. Next slide, please. And this slide was from the last presentation, but it is so important that we put it back in again. This is what you can do differently today. So, this is not a medication or something that you need a prescription from the doctor for, or something that you need to think about whether it applies in your situation or not. It does. When you practice this and you get good at it, things will get better at home. Please stop focusing on facts and start focusing on how you make them feel. They do have a brain disease. They will mix up facts. They will get things wrong. They're doing the best that they can. Pointing it out, sadly, it doesn't heal their brain, but it does hurt their feelings. Instead, give them a pass. Start focusing on their feelings. They will forget the facts. They will never forget how you make them feel. And so I would like to ask you to look in the mirror and ask you, how do you come across with them, to them? Maybe think about the last time you had an interaction with them. What vibe were you giving off? And so you might be saying to me, why does this matter? I'm their caregiver. I can't possibly be happy all the time. And that is true. You have a lot of stress and nobody is happy all the time. That's normal. But what I am saying is that people living with dementia are highly influenced by feelings. So what I mean by that, is your emotions will be mirrored. If you are short and frustrated, they will respond by being short and frustrated. And secondly, this isn't just about being happy or being nice for the sake of being happy or being nice. This is because eventually, if not now, they will need more help from you with care. If they see you as kind or trustworthy or fun-loving or someone that they feel safe with, you'll have more success with care. If they see you as argumentative or correcting them or nagging them or bossing them around or making them feel like they can't do things on their own, you're going to see anger and frustration and probably refusals to let you help them at all. You have control over their reactions a lot of time because they are mirroring what they're seeing in you. And so again, sometimes this is really hard. And so if you do run into a situation where your interaction with them is just kind of spiraling out of control and everybody is upset, the best thing that you can do is walk away, take a break, even just go into the bathroom, step in there, shut the door for a few minutes until you can get your composure back, and then come back out in 20 minutes. Once things get escalated that high, you have to do something to break that cycle. And it's not saying to them, calm down. It's you doing what you can do to get yourself back together again. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this is a question that people ask a lot. So what about lying? This is a very confrontational topic in dementia care, but it is something that comes up. So what do you do when your family member says, I want to go home, and they've lived in this house for 50 years, or I need to go to work and they've been retired for 20, or where is my mother? When those things come up, you do have a choice to make. So take a look at the cartoon there on the right. I think most of us can relate to this at one point or another. So husbands, maybe your wife looks at you and says, does this shirt make me look fat? At that point, you too have a choice. You can say what they say here. No, it's the fat that makes you look fat. And maybe go sleep on the couch for a week or so. Or you can choose to be kind. After all, when she says that, isn't she really just looking for validation that she's beautiful and you love her? And so we know that this is hard. But in dementia, the truth sometimes can really hurt. We talked about how it's all about the feelings, and sometimes the truth, if they can't process and move through it, is not helpful at all. And this, again, is really hard because honesty is generally a virtue for most of us in our culture. We worked with a family once, and it was a man who was taking care of his wife, and he was, of course, being driven crazy when she would say, "Where's my mom?" And so when we met him, his strategy for that was to put her in the car and take her to the cemetery and show her the tombstone and tell her she was dead. And so, as you can imagine, to a person with dementia who honestly didn't remember that, every time she would see that and find out that her mom was dead, she would process that loss. She would start grieving like she had just been told for the very first time. And then afterwards, eventually she would forget and ask again. And so he did this drive multiple times. And so, do you think that it worked? No. He wanted for her to stop saying it, but really what he did was he put her through the fresh pain of loss every single time. Would you want to be reminded of that loss over and over and over again? So, was he honest? Yeah, you can't say he wasn't honest. Was he kind? Certainly not. So we know that reasoning and correcting doesn't work because those are all about facts. But what do you do in a case like this? And so the answer really is called entering their reality. And so what that means is go along with their beliefs or their truth at the moment. If it's really uncomfortable, you can also try distracting them and giving them something else to think about. So I ask you, does it really matter if your mom thinks that she is still a school teacher? Is that hurting anything? We're asking you to choose kindness over brutal honesty. There's no need to inflict pain on them. That just will make things harder for everyone. And it's probably okay to tell your husband that you're going out to lunch and go to lunch. And on the way back from lunch, maybe you coincidentally stop by at the doctor's office. That's okay. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the meaning behind the words. When will my mom be home? Or I want to go home? Or when are the kids getting off the bus? What does all this mean? So, for a lot of people, there's no love like that from your mom. This is why it can be common for people to ask for mom, or to ask when are the kids getting off the bus, or to think about what the comfort of home felt like when you were a kid. Growing up with the love and security and support of mom, or raising babies of your own, for a lot of people, that was really the sweetest time of their life. And so, if she's in that moment, please don't take that from her. Instead, give her the comfort, the love, the security, and the reassurance that she's looking for in the moment. That's what she's really asking for. Next slide. And so let's quickly just talk about how to respond to "Where's my mother?" And so what we recommend is go for the emotion in the question. So she's looking for security or love or reassurance. Give that to her. Always choose kindness. She'll be back soon. She's coming tomorrow. Or maybe take it as an opportunity to talk about some of her favorite things about her mom together. And then find something else for her to think about. If a person keeps coming back to kind of the same thought over and over and over again, in this scenario, it's "Where's my mom?" Sometimes you have to do something. We call that a thought loop. Yep. If you want to get someone out of a thought loop, you have to give them something else to do or something else to think about to be able to break that loop. Next slide. And so just recapping, feelings matter much more than facts. So I've now said that probably 3 or 4 times this evening. It's really important. Facts fade. It's normal in dementia. It would be great if you're correcting facts made a positive difference, but it doesn't. They have dementia. They'll make the same mistake again. You'll correct or argue again, and they'll be mad, and you'll be exhausted. How long do you want to live like that? I'm saying there are ways that you can free yourself from that cycle. And even reasoning, giving some long explanation, or telling them over and over again, "Mom, you need to eat," or giving them all the reasons why they need to take a shower, or telling them when they had their last shower, it will not work. It will make them mad, and you'll be exhausted and frustrated. This is not to say that they don't need a shower or they don't need to eat, but instead try avoiding the explanation and the reasoning, and use simpler language like "come with me," or try some other tricks instead that we'll teach you as we go through this series. And finally, this is something that we see a lot too. Please stop quizzing them. This really just makes them feel bad. When you walk in and you say, "Mom, do you know who I am?" How terrifying that might be for mom if in that moment she doesn't know who you are. Instead, try, "Hi, Mom, it's Amy. How are you today?" And now I am going to turn it over to Stacy for the second half.
Well, thank you, Amy. All right, we'll have the next slide. So as you can see, these are some pretty negative words. And as we said before, we're always trying to keep it positive, because keeping it positive keeps those communication loops open and keeps that positive. So really try to avoid these 3 words: no, don't, and can't. While you are telling that what you're telling them is likely the right choice and the safest choice. No one likes to feel that they're being bossed around, and this can quickly lead to arguments and anger. Instead, try and find ways to put a positive spin on what you're asking them to do. For example, instead of saying, "Don't go out that front door," try, "Let's go get your coat first." And then when they're away from the door, say, "You know what, let's go for a snack. How about we get some cookies or something to drink?" And try and switch it around and use some positive language and say, "Please come with me." That will help to avoid using these negative terms, no, don't, and can't. And then you can guide the conversation back to the positive, and that will lead to more positive feelings and better outcomes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk about some other things that really can upset them and hurt their feelings. When you talk to folks, they can sense when you're trying to rush them. That's one of the quickest ways to get a negative reaction. If they're feeling like you're rushing them or you're trying to take over a task because they're doing it wrong or too slowly, that can really set things off on a bad footing. So instead, try to build in extra time where you can, so that even if you're in a hurry, they don't pick up on it from you. Also, talking about them in front of others, especially talking about their dementia, can be very hurtful. This is just painful for them. So trying to convince them or getting them to understand that they have dementia. A lot of times the part of the brain that would remember that they have dementia is the part that's been damaged by the disease. They don't need to know that they have dementia, you do. Not being able to, not acknowledging their efforts to be helpful can really be hurtful as well. If your mom is moving around the kitchen fussing, and you say, "Go sit down over there, I'll fix dinner," she was just trying to be helpful. She was trying to, she knows that she used to do this all the time, and she doesn't know what she should be doing. But try to find ways to include her in whatever it is you're doing, even if it means that you have to redo some of the things that she's done. It's so important to find ways to include her to help. So maybe ask her to put tomatoes on the salad, or put the silverware or the napkins around the table as you're getting things ready. And always be sure to thank her for helping with dinner, because that is critical. She really needs to have that reinforced, that, to make her feel that she is useful and that she's doing her part. So another thing that is really challenging is pointing out that they need help or that they're doing something wrong. There are ways to get help in the home without telling them it's because they're not safe by themselves. You can, always, tell them that, you found somebody that needs their help, and you need, they're looking for a job or something like that. That's always a good way to introduce them to come in to help. You can clean their house without telling them it's because they're not doing a good job. There are also kind ways to get them to wear winter clothes in the wintertime without telling them that they look ridiculous when they're in their shorts and flip-flops. And like we said last week, we can be redundant in our our information. So, but we really do like to stress these that are so important. So it's really critical to take care of their emotional needs. These are the same needs that we all have. Their need to be useful, to be needed. They need to make their own choices and to be able to have self-esteem. They need to have the opportunity to care for themselves and for others. They love caring for pets. there's not a more well-fed animal on the face of the planet than one living in a dementia home. And also their need for love and to be loved. Okay, next slide, please. The first thing we told you whenever we were going on these topics was that to start doing something different was to focus on feelings. And here's something else that you can do differently today. You can simplify how you talk to them. Generally, try to use 5 words or less and try and keep them simple. You want to give them enough time to process and be able to understand what you're saying and to be able to respond. So that means, like, say something and give them 20 or 30 seconds, if not longer, to be able to respond to you. Try not to interrupt when they're trying to process that and respond to you. And then slow things down. Even if you're in a rush, we mentioned this before, avoid rushing while you're speaking because they process much more slowly than you do. So just keep your words slow and simple. Speak loud enough for them to hear you, but try to avoid raising your voice. This can come across as anger, and so we want to avoid that. And then this one is really big. Avoid yes and no questions if there's clearly a right answer. Did you know that if you ask a person with dementia a yes or no question, 7 out of 10 times they will respond with a no? We can't change this, but we can change how we ask the question. Instead of, do you want a shower today? Say, do you want to take a shower or a bath? Or would you like to take your shower before breakfast or after breakfast today? And try to avoid open-ended questions. This gets really hard if I have dementia and you ask me, what do I want to do today? My brain can't think of all the possibilities of things that I could do today. Instead, give 2 choices. Do you think you want to go to the park or the mall today? Give a choice between 2 things lessens the possibility that they need to process. Do you want cookies or an apple? And also, give directions to them one step at a time. Show them by walking through whatever you're explaining to them. Try to demonstrate to them. So if it means brushing teeth, you're going to talk about, putting the toothpaste on the brush, and you're going to demonstrate along with them. A lot of times it's just a matter of copying what you're doing, and they can follow that more easily than they can listening to your words. Okay, next slide, please. All right, we want to set things up for success for sure. So try and follow these useful tips. If you think about how to start, you want to get their attention by saying their name. Give them processing time so that they can realize you're talking to them. You want to be smiling, have a calm voice, make eye contact. Don't just start talking to them out of the blue. And as you can remember, you want to approach them from the front and slowly, because they've lost that peripheral vision. So because they can't see what's off to the side, many times they won't, that will startle them if you're coming at them from the side to talk to them. So try to come around to the front when you want to have a conversation. Try not to talk to them from the other room. Just like you can't hear somebody who's talking to you from the other room when you forget to put your hearing aids in. They can't hear you or take in what you're saying unless you're right there in front of them. Again, make sure that your nonverbals are positive. Try and smile. Check your tone. Be calm, happy, reassuring. You also want to eliminate distractions. hearing the TV on, or, if they're sitting there watching television, or music playing in the background, or people talking, that can make it harder for them to focus on what you're saying. You want to remove those distractions before you have a conversation with them. And the other thing you want to do is pay attention to their nonverbals. Read the room. If are they returning your smile when you're talking to them? Or does their expression look to you like a storm cloud is about to crash over? So if so, like Amy said before, maybe you need to take a walk around the block, come back again and start anew. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Consider using some of these signs and labels to help them know what to do. So it's not always you guiding them to the bathroom or helping them find their pajamas. Labels can have words and pictures to give them a better chance at being successful and independent. Try to use these. You can use them to help find the bathroom from all the other doors in the house. If you put a sign on it that says bathroom, it has a picture of a toilet there. Try to help them find the right drawer in the kitchen that has the forks and spoons so that they can help you when they're unloading the dishwasher or going to go set the table. Try and help them find their pajamas in the correct dresser drawer rather than, they often will get lost in what they were looking for. So that way they have a visual cue for that. Those visual cues are very important in maintaining their independence, which adds to their being able to be and feel very useful. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, these magic words are just so helpful. You'll be really surprised when you say, "Will you help me?" It's different than "Do you want to?" or "You need to." They just have a different feeling, and I think it gets to their inner emotions. They'll have a different effect and start asking them for their help. And this makes them feel needed, wanted, and useful again. Find ways that they can contribute, even if you have to provide a lot of help along the way. This is part of making them feel good. And as we said before, they need to feel needed and useful. Asking for their help is another great way to avoid telling them what to do. For example, instead of saying, "Don't go in there," try, "I need your help folding laundry." Even if they don't do it perfectly, be sure to praise them because it's all about making them feel good about themselves. That's the critical piece. All right, next slide, please. Okay, it's time for questions, but we just wanted to, again, remind you that we do have our call-in sessions. It'll be this Wednesday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the phone number is 412-435-8950. And please call in with those questions. It can be very helpful. We've been able to help a lot of people with these things, and you just don't know when these unusual questions crop up and you don't have any answer for it. So we're there to help. Also, please register and for the next session, which will be in 2 weeks, and that'll be February the 8th from 7 to 8 p.m. again. And the webinar will be on what can you do to build better days at home. And if you haven't taken it yet, please take the survey. Michelle's putting the link into the chat right now. And or we will be sending you out a paper copy of the survey if you prefer the snail mail like me. Then you can send it back to us. We'll get the workbooks out to you along with the surveys. Thank you very much for participating in tonight's talk. Michelle, I'll send it back to you for questions and answers.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Stacy, so much.
Sure.
Do have a couple questions. I did put the chat, I put the information in the chat. So you can call in for the one-on-one coaching next Wednesday on February 1st. And it's also the link I put in the chat also. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I hit the button. Again, I was saying thank you, Stacy. I did put the link into the chat, and I also put the information for the telephone number for the one-on-one coaching for all our guests. And the one-on-one coaching will be February 1st, 2023, next Wednesday. So we do have a couple questions. One question is, one of the participants have wrote, my mom is constantly losing things and then accuses me of stealing them. What should I do? How should I handle that situation? I'm gonna give that question to you, Amy.
Sure. Well, so that can be a common thing. And, you know, when you think about it from the perspective of the person with dementia, you know, maybe they're the only person living in the house. They know that they had their purse. They forget the part where, you know, they dropped it in the other room somewhere and suddenly it's gone. And, you know, they know that they were, I mean, they believe that it wasn't them that hid it. So it must have been someone else who stole it. It actually is kind of a logical conclusion that you could draw from their perspective. However, this is very frustrating to caregivers. And often your first response is to say, like, Mom, I didn't steal your checkbook. I didn't, you know, I don't have your purse. Why would I do that? And it ends up turning into an argument between the person with dementia and their caregiver. So instead of that, you know, if arguing and reasoning and rationalizing don't work, and we know they don't, it's hard though, because that's usually like our go-to first response. But instead of responding with that, could you find a way to agree with them, which takes your mom off of the defense? Like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, your purse is gone. Let me help you look for it. So agree and align. And then help her start looking for her purse, or then maybe distract her in another activity. But what you don't want to do is tell her that her version of reality is not true, because she's not going to believe you and it will just make things harder.
Thank you. That's such a good information, teaching us how to step into the reality of the dementia patient. Because I think that's some things that a lot of people don't understand, how you have to step into the reality. I do have a question for you, Stacy. My husband gets angry when I'm trying to help him. He states that nobody's going to make decisions for me. How should that person handle that situation?
That is a hard one, and we find that often too. It's really hard for you as the spouse, because, you know, that's heartbreaking. But, you know, you have to try and not take it personally. And again, enter into their reality and try and go with the flow. You want to say something like, oh yeah, he'll be here for dinner, or he'll be here tomorrow. Because, you know, in a few more minutes, or, you know, hopefully at some time there will be a recognition, but if not, it's something that you have to prepare yourself for. And it is heartbreaking, but you want to try to distract them if that gets to be a loop question, like Amy mentioned before. You know, try and, you know, how about a snack, or, you know, let's go in and work on this puzzle, or, you know, something else to give them another thing to think about.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a couple more questions. My mother looks at her photo album, and when she looks at the old pictures, sometimes she gets very quiet and withdrawn. And I've noticed that's been a change for her recently. How should I handle that situation? And I'll give that to you, Amy.
Sure. So thinking about mom looking at the photo album, I wonder, maybe she's not recognizing the people that are in it. Maybe it also, if you are looking at the photo album together, and it can be common, like we hear about the importance of helping people with dementia connect with their past through old pictures, and photo albums are a great activity that you can do looking through them together. But it's important to use those photo albums as a tool for good times rather than a way that you can point out the losses that she's having. So for example, if I'm sitting with Stacy and I'm saying to Stacy, who's that man in that picture? And Stacy doesn't know, it's probably going to make Stacy feel bad and probably kind of withdraw. Another thing that you could do also would actually be to put some labels on some of the pictures with people's names underneath them.
That's really useful.
Yeah, and instead of saying, "Mom, who's this in this picture?" you can say things like, "Oh my gosh, look at that crazy wedding dress she's wearing," or "Oh my goodness, we had such a nice time on that family vacation." Use it to spur some positive feelings rather than as a way to point out what Mom can't remember anymore.
Thank you. One thing I just want to mention that I've noticed when you were talking about when you're giving the patient, or you're giving your family member, you don't want to give them ask them questions. Do you know who I am? Or you want to introduce yourself. I think sometimes the caregiver has to remember, if the dementia patient doesn't know who you are, how hurtful that might be for the caregiver also. So kind of taking the hurt from both of them, I think the technique that you brought up is really, really, really beneficial by just reintroducing yourself. I've seen family members that it's very difficult for them when that dementia patient can't remember them. So that kind of, if they can look at it from the aspect, I'm taking the hurt away from me as well as I'm taking the hurt away from my loved one.
Yeah, I remember working with a man who he would get really distressed when his wife wouldn't be able to remember him. And so he was constantly showing her their wedding picture. And so when she would get it right, like when she would say, "Well, that's my husband," like George would be so happy and he would have a good day as a result of it. And when she would get it wrong, he would have an awful day. And so, whether she gets it right, like when she gets it right, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's getting better. And when she gets it wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean she's getting worse. Like a person's memory can kind of fluctuate through the course of a day, and that's okay.
We do have one more comment from our participant, and one of our participants have wrote, "Trying different approaches when my mother becomes combative and she thinks I'm the kid and wants to scold me. I need another approach." So can we give some ideas of how they can handle a situation? And Stacy, can you help us with that?
Sure. Like again, sometimes it's that combativeness can be a response to feeling threatened in some way, or even though if you're not putting something out there, but so be very careful with your language, be very positive, and try to distract, because you can't, maybe it's a matter of that they're feeling that you're rushing them, trying to get them dressed, or you're trying to get them to follow your agenda as opposed to their agenda, and they're reading that. So sometimes that's a point where you need to step back and leave the situation for a little while if they're being combative, just because you got to break that cycle. So I don't know if Amy, if you have any other tips for
Well, I think those are good tips. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about is to think about the combativeness, not just as a symptom of the disease, but as a response to something that happened beforehand. So, you know, if you think back to the last time that she was combative, what happened immediately afterward? What happened immediately before that? So, was there an argument about whether she needed care, or was it time to take medications? And, you know, what happened between you and she? Or is there something, another thing could be something in the environment that is causing stress on her part? So are there a lot of loud noises? Is there something that is causing fear in her? These things that people call behaviors, they don't typically occur, you know, just for no reason at all. They are usually a response to something. So if you can figure out what it is that she's responding to, you know, you can't change that, but you can change, you know, what you did or what is in the environment, and then you can change the response as a result. We could talk specifically about that if you wanted to call in for a coaching session. I'd love to know more and be able to give you some really specific strategies.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. I just want to thank both of you for just giving us a wonderful presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Joanne Boyd as she closes us out.
You're on mute, Joanne.
Sorry, I had to stay mute all evening, and so then I had to turn it back on. Thank you again to all of you who have participated in this webinar session. We've had a great panelist and facilitator. This is session 2 that has gone great, and I'm looking forward to section 3. So for those of you that have taken the time out of your evening to get some information on this topic, I do hope you can take advantage of the call-in one-on-one sessions, even if you don't need a whole half an hour, just to get some of your, you know, issues addressed that way, and then join us back again. So on behalf of Gateway Medical Society and Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action, thank you again for taking the time this evening.
Thank you.